There's a moment, right before something goes catastrophically wrong, where everything still feels like a good idea, where confidence is at its peak, where logic quietly leaves the room, and where a human being looks directly at reality and decides to negotiate with it. That moment is where this video lives, because these aren't accidents. Accidents are random, unpredictable, unfair. What you're about to see is something else entirely. These are decisions, carefully made, confidently executed, and completely disconnected from how the world actually works. 10 stories where people didn't just ignore danger, they challenged it, mocked it, performed for it, as if physics was optional, as if consequences were just suggestions. This is what happens when ego stops being a personality trait and starts becoming a survival liability. When the need to look impressive outweighs the instinct to stay alive. When someone says, "Relax, I've got this," and that sentence becomes the last correct thing they ever say. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Every single one of these people thought they were in control. Every single one of them believed they were the exception. And for a very brief moment, they were right. Right up until reality stepped in and corrected the mistake. So pay attention, not because these stories are rare, but because they're not. Because somewhere, in some version of your life, you've had that same thought. That's probably fine. This is what happens when it isn't. Number 1, the joke that outperformed gravity. There are two types of people in this world: people who make jokes and people who commit to them. Our first contestant built his entire personality around the second type. He wasn't just funny, he needed to be the funniest. Every room he entered became a stage, every conversation an opportunity, every quiet moment a problem to fix. And on a family trip to a massive canyon, a place already doing most of the visual work for him, he saw something even better than a view. He saw an audience. Now, let's talk about canyons for a second. They are not scenic backgrounds. They are geological reminders that gravity always wins. Loose rock, unstable edges, drops measured in seconds, not feet. Safety railings exist for one reason: because people exactly like him exist. But rules are boring, and boring doesn't get laughs. So while everyone else stood behind the barrier, taking photos, appreciating the view, he had a better idea. He was going to fake a fall. Just a quick performance. Step over the railing, pretend to slip, make everyone scream, then pop back up like a hero of comedy. In his head, perfect. Maximum reaction. Zero consequence. He climbs over. The ground shifts slightly under his shoes. Not enough to scare him, just enough to matter. Behind him, people notice. Some laugh, some get uncomfortable. But that reaction? That's fuel. He starts the act, arms flailing, voice raised. Oh, I'm slipping. And here's the problem. When you act like you're losing balance, you often actually do. Because balance isn't just physical, it's intentional. The moment you fake losing it, you remove the part of your brain that was keeping you stable. His foot slides, not dramatically, just enough. Enough for gravel to move, enough for friction to disappear, enough for reality to step in. His hand reaches back, too far, misses the railing, tries the rock, crumbles. Because cliffs don't support performances, they punish them. The fake panic turns real, instantly. No transition, no warning, just a hard switch from control to none. And gravity doesn't wait. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't care if you're joking. He drops. Fast. Faster than thought. Faster than regret. And in less time than it took him to plan the joke, the performance is over. The camera keeps recording, because someone always records. And for a few seconds, no one speaks. Because the brain needs time to process when something stops being funny and becomes final. The worst part? He did get what he wanted. a reaction, a memory, a moment nobody would ever forget. Just not in the way he imagined. Because in the end, he wasn't competing with the audience. He was competing with gravity. And gravity doesn't laugh. Number 2. The shortcut that deleted the future. There's a certain type of intelligence that becomes dangerous the moment it thinks it's efficient. Not stupid, not careless, just optimized. Our next contestant lived his life like a system. Every decision measured, every routine refined, every minute accounted for. He didn't waste time, he eliminated it. And on paper, that sounds like discipline. In reality, it becomes a quiet belief that you can outthink everything, even things that don't negotiate, like trains. It was a normal evening, cold, routine, the kind of day that ends exactly how it started, predictable. He checked the route home. 2 options. The road, 45 minutes, safe, boring, inefficient. Or a maintenance tunnel that cut straight through the railway system, 15 minutes, direct, clean, optimized. Now, to a normal brain, this isn't a decision, it's a warning. Because railway tunnels are not shortcuts. They are controlled environments for machines that move faster than your brain reacts, cannot stop on command, and assume you are not there. But his brain didn't process it like that. His brain saw numbers, 45 versus 15, a 30-minute gain. And once that calculation locks in, everything else becomes negotiable, even survival. So he chose the tunnel. And to make the walk better, he added one more layer of optimization. Noise-canceling headphones. Top tier. Expensive. Designed to remove the outside world completely. Because silence helps focus, helps thinking, helps efficiency. What he didn't realize is that he had just removed the only system capable of warning him. Now picture the setup. A long, enclosed tunnel. Concrete walls. No side exits. No margin for error. He walks in, headphones on, music up. The world disappears. Behind him, somewhere in the distance, a train enters the same tunnel. Modern trains don't roar. They don't shake the earth the way people imagine. They glide, quiet, fast, precise, and most importantly, too fast to matter once they're close. His plan, if you can call it that, was simple. If anything comes, I'll feel it. Which sounds reasonable until you realize something critical. You don't feel a train. Not early enough. Not in time to react. Especially not when your senses are already compromised. And especially not when it's behind you. He keeps walking. Steady pace. Relaxed. Maybe even satisfied. Because in his head, this is working. He's saving time. Winning. Beating the system. At some point, the train operator sees him. A figure. Centered in the track. Walking calmly. Not turning. Not reacting. The horn is hit. Full power. A sound designed to cut through distance, walls, and noise. A sound meant to say, move, now. But inside his world, nothing changes. The music continues. The rhythm stays the same. The system he built is working perfectly. It just removed the wrong thing. The distance closes, fast, faster than comprehension. The light from the train fills the tunnel behind him, but he's facing forward, still walking, still thinking, still completely unaware that his timeline is about to be replaced. There is no dramatic turn, no last-second realization, because awareness requires input, and he removed it. The impact is immediate, unavoidable, final. The tunnel goes back to normal. The train continues, because like all machines, it doesn't pause for human miscalculation. It just follows the track, exactly as designed. And that's the point. Nothing malfunctioned, nothing broke. The system worked, perfectly. The only failure was the assumption that you could out-optimize reality, because efficiency has a limit, and that limit is anything that doesn't care about your plan. Number 3, the bulletproof belief. There's confidence, and then there's belief so strong It replaces reality. Not ignores it, replaces it. Our next contestant didn't think he was safe. He knew he was. Not because of science, not because of evidence, but because someone told him a story and he decided it was true. And once that happens, once belief becomes stronger than physics, everything after that is just a countdown. It started with a product, not a real one, not tested, not verified. Just something passed around in whispers and promises. A solution, a shortcut, a way to bypass one of the most fundamental rules of existence. If something hits you hard enough, you don't win. But he didn't see it that way. He saw an opportunity to be different, to be untouchable, to stand in front of danger and prove it didn't apply to him. And more importantly, to prove it in front of other people. Because belief is one thing, but validation, that requires an audience. So he gathered them. Friends, neighbors, curious onlookers. People drawn not by logic, but by the energy of someone who seems certain. And certainty is contagious, even when it's wrong. He explains it to them. Confident, clear, almost convincing. This works. You'll see. Because in his mind, this isn't risky. This is a demonstration, a reveal, a moment where everyone else realizes he's ahead of them, that he understands something they don't. And that feeling is addictive. Now let's pause for a second, because what he's about to challenge is not an opinion, not a theory, not something flexible. He's about to challenge velocity, force, energy, the kind of physics that doesn't care about belief systems. A projectile doesn't ask questions. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't pause and consider whether you feel protected. It just does its job, every time, without exception. But none of that exists in his version of reality. In his version, he's the exception. So he sets it up, positions himself, stands firm, chest forward, body still. Because posture matters when you're performing, and this is a performance. He signals. Someone else hesitates. Of course they do. Because even if you believe, there's still that small voice, the one that says, this doesn't feel right. But pressure wins. Crowd, expectation, momentum. The moment has already started. Stopping now would mean admitting doubt, and doubt doesn't fit the narrative. So the trigger is pulled. And here's the thing about moments like this. They don't stretch. They don't slow down. They don't give you time to rethink anything. From action to outcome, it's immediate. The sound hits first, sharp, unmistakable. And instantly, the belief is tested. Not debated, not questioned, tested. And it fails, completely. Because belief doesn't absorb impact. Confidence doesn't deflect force. And no amount of conviction changes what happens when reality makes contact. The crowd goes silent, because there's no confusion about what just happened. No gray area. No maybe. Just a hard, irreversible correction. The kind that only physics can deliver. And the worst part? He never doubted. Not for a second. Up until the exact moment where doubt would have saved him. Because that's the trap. It's not the lack of intelligence, it's the absence of hesitation. That final pause, the one that says, wait, what if I'm wrong? That pause never happened. And without it, there was nothing left to stop the outcome. Because in the end, he didn't lose to the situation. He lost to the idea that he couldn't. And that idea was the most dangerous thing in the entire story. Number 4. The climb that was supposed to impress. There's a very specific kind of bad decision that only exists when someone is watching. Not because the idea is good, not because it makes sense, but because in that moment, not doing it feels worse than the risk itself. That's where this story lives. A fairground, music in the background, light spinning slowly in the dark. The kind of place where everything feels lighter than it actually is. And right in the middle of it, a Ferris wheel. Slow, predictable, safe, which is exactly why it wasn't enough. Because safe doesn't impress anyone, and impressing someone was the entire goal.
He wasn't there for the ride. He was there for her.
New date, new impression. One shot to be memorable. Now here's the problem. When your entire plan is based on being remembered, you stop thinking about how. You just think about if. And in his mind, being the guy who climbs a moving Ferris wheel, that's unforgettable. That's bold. That's something she'll talk about. And she will. Just not the way he expects. It starts small. A comment. Kinda boring, isn't it? Nothing serious. Just conversation. But in his head, that's a challenge. And challenges require responses. So he makes a decision. Fast, confident, final. I'll make it interesting. Before anyone can process what that means, he moves, steps out, grabs the metal frame, starts climbing. Now pause, because this is where reality and imagination split. In his imagination, he's strong, balanced, in control. In reality, he's climbing a structure designed to rotate, covered in grease, built to move, not to hold people outside of it. But adrenaline doesn't care about design. It just amplifies confidence. He climbs higher, 10 feet, 20 feet. People notice. Phones come out, because of course they do. And that's fuel. Because now it's not just about her. Now it's about everyone. He's the moment, the center, exactly where he wanted to be. He keeps going, ignoring the small details. Hands starting to sweat, grip slightly, slipping metal not as stable as it looks. Because stopping now, that would mean losing the moment. And losing the moment feels worse than falling. So he pushes higher, 30 feet, 40 feet. Now the ground looks different, farther, less forgiving. But he's committed, and commitment, without awareness, is just momentum toward a bad outcome. Then it happens, not dramatically, not suddenly, just a small slip. One hand doesn't hold the way it should. One foot misses placement, and instantly, everything changes. Because balance isn't something you negotiate. You either have it or you don't. He tries to recover, grabs for support, but the structure is moving. The angles are wrong. The grip is gone. And now, he's not climbing anymore. He's falling. But this isn't a clean fall. Ferris wheels aren't empty space. They're frameworks, obstacles, layers of metal beams, which means on the way down, he doesn't just drop. He hits. Once, then again, each impact breaking momentum, but not enough to stop it, until finally, there's nothing left to hit. Just ground, solid, unmoving, final. The crowd goes silent, because moments like that don't register immediately. They lag, like the brain needs a second to catch up with reality. And somewhere above, she's still sitting in the gondola, frozen, watching the exact opposite of what she expected. Because he did succeed. In one thing, he made the moment unforgettable, just not impressive, not heroic.
Not bold, just irreversible.
Because in the end, he wasn't competing for attention. He was competing against physics, on a moving structure, with no margin for error. And physics doesn't care who's watching. Number 5, the cold that didn't care about mindset. There's a phrase you hear a lot these days, mind over matter. It sounds powerful, disciplined, almost heroic. Like if you just believe hard enough, you can override anything. Pain, fear, limits, even your own body. And for our next contestant, that wasn't just a mindset. It was a brand. He wasn't just a guy. He was a persona. An online identity built on one simple promise. I can push further than you. Colder, harder, longer. Everything was a challenge. Everything was content. And content needs escalation. Because what worked yesterday is boring today. So when ice baths became the trend, he didn't just participate, he optimized it. Of course he did. Bigger tub, more ice, longer duration, and most importantly, live stream. Because if you're going to suffer, people need to see it. Now here's what most people don't understand about cold exposure. It's not a test of willpower, it's a negotiation with biology. Your body has limits, hard limits, temperature thresholds where systems start shutting down. Not slowly, not politely, but decisively. And those limits don't care about your mindset. They don't care about your followers. They don't care how many comments say, "Stay strong." But he believed they did. So he set the stage. Backyard, camera on, chat rolling, hundreds of people watching, waiting, expecting. He steps into the tub, ice water, immediate shock. The body reacts instantly, sharp inhale, muscles tighten, heart rate spikes. This is the first warning, the loud one, the obvious one. But he smiles. Of course he does, because pain is part of the performance. See, it's all mental. And for a few minutes, it looks like he's right. He controls his breathing, keeps talking, keeps engaging. Because as long as he's talking, he's winning. But what the camera doesn't show is what's happening underneath. Blood vessels constrict. Core temperature begins to drop. The body starts prioritizing survival. Keep the brain alive. Sacrifice everything else. Hands go numb. Feet lose sensation. Shivering begins. Violent. Uncontrollable. That's not weakness. That's the body fighting. Burning energy to create heat. And this is the moment where most people get out. Because the signal is clear. This is enough. But he doesn't. Because getting out means losing. Means the narrative breaks. Means all that mind over matter talk collapses in front of everyone. So instead, he reframes it. This is where it gets real, and keeps going. The shivering intensifies. Speech starts to slow. Subtle at first. Just a slight delay. A slight slur. But to him, that's just fatigue. To anyone who understands what's happening, that's the beginning of something much worse. Because when the body stops shivering, it's not because you've adapted, it's because you've run out of energy. And that's exactly what happens. The shaking slows, then stops, and he smiles, relieved. I beat it. Except he didn't. That was the final stage. Core temperature now dangerously low, heart rhythm unstable, brain function impaired. He tries to keep talking. Words don't come out right. Thoughts don't connect. The chat keeps scrolling. Encouragement. Hype. Nobody inside the screen understands what's happening, but his body does, and it's shutting down. Quietly. System by system. Then, he goes still. Not dramatic, not sudden, just stops. Slumps slightly. Eyes unfocused. The stream keeps running, because the camera doesn't know the difference between effort and failure. And outside, everything looks calm, peaceful even, like you finally found control. But control was never part of the equation, because cold doesn't test your mindset, it tests your limits. And the moment you cross them, there's no negotiation, no second round, no push-through, just a system that stops when it's pushed too far. And the cruelest part? He thought he won. Right at the exact moment, he lost. Number 6. The backyard launch that wasn't cleared for landing. There's a certain type of genius that only exists in backyards. It doesn't use blueprints. It doesn't run simulations. It definitely doesn't pass inspections. But it has confidence. A lot of it. And in the right group of friends, confidence is all you need to start building something you absolutely shouldn't. This wasn't a project. It was a weekend. Beer, tools, an idea that sounded just ridiculous enough to feel possible. Someone said it first. Think we could launch a person? Now, in most situations, that question ends the conversation. Here, it started one. Because once the idea was out, it became a challenge. And challenges don't get ignored. They get built. So they gathered materials. 2 heavy wooden posts hammered into the ground. Industrial-grade elastic tubing. strong enough to stretch, strong enough to snap. A makeshift cradle, and a landing plan that can best be described as somewhere over there, which is another way of saying they had no idea. But in their minds, this wasn't reckless. This was engineering, creative, experimental, and most importantly, recordable. Because if you're going to launch a human body into the air, you need at least one person filming it. For documentation, for proof, for the internet. Now comes the most important decision. Who's going up? And of course, it's him. The loudest one. The most confident one. The guy who says, "I'll do it," before anyone finishes asking. Helmet on, sort of. Positioned in the cradle, grinning. Because in his head, this is legendary. This is the clip. The moment. The thing people replay. And to be fair, they will. Just not for the reasons he thinks. Now let's talk physics. Because physics is the only participant in this story that actually knows what it's doing. When you stretch elastic material, you store energy, a lot of it. And when you release that energy, it has one goal, to go somewhere. Preferably, not through a human body. But again, nobody here is calculating anything. No angles, no trajectory, no velocity, just instinct. And instinct, in this case, is wildly unqualified. They pull the system back, further, further. The tubing stretches, creaks, vibrates with tension. You can feel it. That moment where something is holding more energy than it should. That's the warning. The one that says, stop here, but stopping means not finding out. And finding out is the whole point. So they go further. One final pull, maximum tension, maximum stupidity, and then release. The launch is violent, instant, explosive. He shoots forward, faster than expected, higher than planned. For a brief second, it works. He's airborne, clear, free, exactly what he imagined. Because for that one moment, he's not wrong. He is flying. And that's the problem. Because now physics takes over completely, and physics doesn't care where you wanted to go. It only cares where you're going. He reaches the peak, and this is where everything becomes obvious. Because from up there, you see it. The miscalculation, the missing piece, the one thing nobody accounted for, the giant tree, directly in the path, too far to avoid, too solid to ignore. And suddenly, this isn't flight anymore. It's trajectory, and trajectory is a commitment. There's no steering, no adjustment, no correction, just forward, fast, unstoppable. The impact is immediate, hard, final. Not cinematic, not dramatic. Just the exact result of combining speed, mass, and a very solid object. The camera shakes, someone swears, someone runs. Because the moment just shifted from experiment to consequence. And the worst part? Everything worked exactly as built. The structure held. The release triggered. The launch succeeded. The system did its job perfectly. It's just that the job was never the problem. The thinking was. Because in the end, they didn't fail to build something that works. They succeeded. And that's what made it dangerous. Because when bad ideas work, they don't teach you anything until it's too late. Number 7, the thing you should never lick. There's a certain sentence that should never exist in any situation. Watch this. Especially when it's followed by, I know what I'm doing, because that combination has ended more stories than almost anything else. And this one started exactly like that. A beach. Warm. Quiet. The kind of place where nothing feels dangerous, which is exactly why people forget that nature doesn't change just because the view is nice. He wasn't reckless in the obvious way, not loud, not chaotic. He was worse. He was confident. The kind of confidence that comes from knowing just enough to be wrong. He had heard about this before, somewhere, at some point, something about this animal being dangerous, but also something about it being exaggerated, a myth, blown out of proportion. And that's all it takes. Because once your brain labels something as overhyped, you stop respecting it. You start testing it. And testing it is where everything goes wrong. They found it near the water. Small, strange-looking, inflated, almost cartoonish. The kind of creature that doesn't look threatening, which makes it perfect, because the most dangerous things rarely look the part. Everyone else kept distance, observed, respected the unknown, but not him, because to him, this was an opportunity, a moment to demonstrate something, not knowledge, dominance, because explaining something isn't enough. You have to prove it, out loud, in front of people. So he starts talking, calm, certain, almost annoyed. It's not that dangerous. You only get hurt if you eat it. It's just people being dramatic. And here's the thing about statements like that. They don't come from research. They come from assumption, from incomplete information filled in with confidence, which is infinitely more dangerous than ignorance. Because ignorance hesitates, confidence acts. He picks it up, carefully but not cautiously, because caution would imply doubt, and doubt would ruin the moment. The animal reacts, inflates more, a silent warning.
One that has worked for millions of years, against predators, against threats, against anything that understands what it means. But he doesn't, because to him, it's just behavior, not danger, just part of the act. So he leans in, closer, smiling, because this is the payoff. The moment where everyone realizes he's right, that all the warnings were exaggerated. And then he says it. Watch this. And before anyone can process what that means, he does it. One small action, one irreversible mistake. Now here's what he didn't understand. The danger wasn't hypothetical. It wasn't conditional. It wasn't something that only activates under specific circumstances. It was already there, always there, built into the animal. Not as a threat, but as a defense. And defense doesn't wait for permission. The effect is immediate, not dramatic, not explosive, just wrong. His face changes, subtly at first, confusion, because something doesn't feel right.
A tingling, numbness, small but spreading, fast. And this is the moment, the exact moment where realization begins, because confidence disappears instantly when reality contradicts it. He tries to talk. Words don't land properly. Tongue feels heavy, unresponsive. That's when panic starts. Real panic. Not the kind you fake for attention, the kind that hits when your body stops listening. Because what's happening now isn't external, it's internal. Signals failing, control fading, systems shutting down, one function at a time. Breathing becomes difficult, not painful, just incomplete, like something is missing, because it is. Control. He stumbles, collapses, and now everyone else understands, but too late, because this isn't something you fix, this isn't something you reverse. This is something that happens, once, and then it's done. The animal is still there, exactly where it was, unchanged, unbothered, because it didn't attack. It didn't chase, it didn't escalate, it just existed, exactly as designed. And he decided to test it, because in the end, he didn't lose to danger. He lost to the belief that danger needed to look obvious, that it needed to announce itself, warn him, wait for him. But it never does. It just sits there, quiet, harmless looking, waiting for someone confident enough to ignore it. Number 8. The fire hose that didn't need to prove anything. There's a specific kind of confidence that only appears in public. Not quiet confidence, not competence, but loud performative certainty, the kind that needs witnesses. Because if no one sees it, what's the point? That's where this story begins. A community event, bright afternoon, families everywhere. Kids running around with plastic helmets, Fire trucks lined up like exhibits. It's supposed to be educational, safe, controlled. A place where danger is explained, not demonstrated. And then there's him, not part of the event, but suddenly the center of it. Because he sees something and immediately turns it into a challenge. A fire hose demonstration. A controlled stream of water shooting across the lot. Powerful, precise, impressive. To everyone else, that's enough. To him, it's a question. Is it really that strong? Now here's the problem. He doesn't ask it quietly. He announces it. Because questions aren't the goal. Reactions are. So he steps forward, closer, talking louder, more certain. That's it? That's what you're worried about? And now people are watching, which means he's committed. Because once you perform confidence publicly, you can't walk it back. Not without losing the moment. And losing the moment feels worse than being wrong. So he escalates. I could take that. Now, to a rational mind, this is where it ends. A joke, a laugh, move on. But he doesn't move on. Because he's already built the narrative in his head. He stands still, the water hits, he doesn't move, everyone is impressed. Simple, clean, heroic. Except, none of that involves reality. Let's pause for a second. Because what he's challenging is not a prop, not a visual effect. A fire hose at even moderate pressure outputs hundreds of pounds of force, is designed to knock down barriers, is operated by trained professionals for a reason. It's not water, it's momentum, directed, relentless. But in his version, it's just a stream, something you can handle. So he positions himself, feet planted, chest forward, posture of someone about to prove something. And that's exactly what he's doing, just not what he thinks. The firefighters hesitate because they already know the outcome. They've seen what this does. But eventually, they give in. Not full power, just enough. A controlled demonstration. Safe for people who understand what's coming. He nods, ready. The crowd quiets, phones up, because this is it, the moment, the test, the proof. The hose activates, the stream hits, and for one fraction of a second, he's still standing. And in that fraction, his brain says, I was right. Then physics responds. The force transfers instantly. There's no buildup, no warning, just a direct application of energy to mass. His body reacts, not by resisting, but by moving. Fast. Backward. Feet leave the ground. Balance disappears. Control is gone. Because the equation was never in his favor. He becomes motion, uncontrolled, directed not by will, but by force. And then, impact. Hard, sudden, final. The kind of sound that ends conversations. The crowd goes silent. Because moments like that don't feel real at first. They lag, like the brain needs a second, to accept what just replaced the joke. Because it was a joke, up until it wasn't. And the cruel part? He was right about one thing. He didn't move. Not by choice, but because once the system took over, his input didn't matter anymore. Because in the end, he didn't lose to strength. He lost to misunderstanding. He thought he was testing power, but power wasn't being tested. It was being applied, exactly as designed. And design always wins against assumption. Number 9. The smart system that was only smart until it wasn't. There's a moment when intelligence turns into arrogance. Not because someone doesn't know enough, but because they think they know more than necessary, more than standards, more than warnings, more than the people who built the system in the first place. And that's where this story lives. Not in stupidity, but in customization, optimization, control. Because he didn't just use technology, he improved it. At least, that's what he believed. A normal garage door? Too basic, too restricted, full of annoying safety features. Auto-reverse sensors, pressure detection, emergency stops, all designed for one purpose, to prevent exactly what's about to happen. But to him, Those weren't protections. They were limitations, barriers between him and perfection. So he removed them, one by one. Clean code, custom system, full control from his phone. No delays, no interference, just direct command. Up, down, stop. Absolute authority. And that's the trap. Because the moment you remove safeguards, you don't make a system better, you make it unforgiving. Now everything works, right up until the moment it doesn't. And when it doesn't, there's nothing left to catch you. He's proud of it. Of course he is. Because this isn't just a tool, it's proof. Proof that he's smarter, more capable, more advanced than everyone else still using default settings. So he shows it off. To a neighbor. Casual demonstration. But not really. Because demonstrations like this are performances. They need impact. Something memorable. Something that proves, without question, that the system works perfectly. And this is where the idea forms. Fast, confident, dangerous. I'll show you how precise it is. Now here's the thing about precision. Real precision is measured in controlled environments, with safeguards, with backups, with margin for error. But he doesn't do any of that, because in his mind, he is the safeguard. So he sets it up, positions himself, on the ground, directly under the door. Because if you're going to prove control, you need risk. Otherwise, what's the point? The neighbor hesitates. Of course he does, because this doesn't feel right. And that feeling? That's instinct, the last line of defense. But instinct only works if you listen to it. He doesn't, because doubt would ruin the demonstration. And he's already committed. So he lifts the phone, finger over the control, confident, relaxed, in charge. The door starts moving. Slow, heavy, mechanical, controlled descent. And at first, it works exactly as planned. Smooth, stable, predictable. He talks through it, explains it, because explaining reinforces control. See, I've got it. I can stop it anytime. And in that moment, he believes it, completely. Now we reach the most dangerous point in any system, the assumption phase, where everything has worked so far, so it must continue working. And that's where mistakes hide, because systems don't fail gradually, they fail instantly, at the exact worst moment. He waits, lets the door come closer, closer, because the closer it gets, the more impressive the stop will be. The tighter the margin, the bigger the proof. And then he taps, or at least he tries to, but nothing happens. Not immediately, because the one thing he didn't remove was unpredictability. The phone lags, a fraction of a second. Nothing noticeable in normal life, but here, that delay is everything. Because the door doesn't lag. It doesn't buffer. It doesn't wait. It just continues. Mass plus gravity plus motion. Uninterrupted. Uncompromised. By the time the command registers, the system has already completed its action. And now, there's nothing left to stop. The demonstration ends before he realizes it failed. Because control was never real. It just felt real, until the moment it mattered. And that's the lesson. He didn't build a smarter system. He built a faster one. Stronger, more direct, more efficient, but also completely unforgiving. Because safety isn't inefficiency, it's margin, it's time. It's the space between mistake and consequence. And he removed all of it, one feature at a time, until all that remained was a system that worked perfectly, right up until the moment it didn't. No. 10. The final shot that cost everything. There's a certain kind of obsession that doesn't look dangerous at first. It looks like passion, dedication, the pursuit of something perfect, the right angle, the right light, the right moment. Because for some people, capturing the moment is more important than being in it. And for him, that moment had to be unforgettable. A storm was rolling in, Dark clouds stacking across the sky. Wind cutting through the open field. The kind of atmosphere that turns ordinary footage into something cinematic. This wasn't random. This was opportunity. Because storms don't wait. They don't repeat. You either capture them or you miss them. And missing it wasn't an option. So he set up, drone ready, controller in hand, already framing the shot in his head. Because this wasn't just filming, this was creation, art, something people would watch and say, how did he get that? And that question was the goal. Not safety,
Not distance, not limits, just the shot.
now look at the environment. An old electrical tower, tall, rust-covered, weathered by years of neglect, standing alone in an open field, which makes it exactly what it is, a lightning magnet. But he doesn't see danger. He sees composition, leading lines, contrast, scale, everything an image needs to feel powerful. And to get that shot, he needs proximity, closer, higher, more dramatic. So he launches the drone. It rises into the wind, stable, responsive, capturing everything perfectly. And for a moment, this is working. The footage is beautiful. The storm feels alive. Exactly what he wanted. But it's not enough, because it's never enough. Not when perfection is the target. He wants more. A hero shot. Something immersive. Something that doesn't just show the scene, but puts you inside it. And the only way to get that is to move closer. So he does. He approaches the tower, starts climbing. One hand on the structure, one hand on the controller. Because stopping the drone would break the moment. And breaking the moment is failure. Now here's where reality starts speaking. The wind is stronger up here. The metal is wet. The structure isn't solid. It's aged, unstable. But none of that registers fully, because focus narrows perception. And when you're locked in on one goal, everything else becomes background noise, even danger. He climbs higher, adjusts the angle, moves the drone into position, and for a brief moment, everything aligns. The shot is perfect. Storm behind him, tower framing the image, movement, depth, scale. This is it, the clip, the one. And right there, at the peak of the moment, he makes the smallest mistake. Not a dramatic one, not reckless, just unnecessary. He shifts his weight, steps harder on a beam. Old, corroded, already weakened. And that's all it takes. The metal gives. Not slowly, not gradually, instantly. Because structures like that don't warn you. They fail, without negotiation, without hesitation. 1 second, support. Next second, nothing. He reaches for balance, but balance needs something to work with, and there's nothing left, just air and gravity. And gravity doesn't miss. The fall is clean, no obstacles, no interruptions, just distance and speed. The drone, still in the air, keeps recording, stable, focused, capturing everything. Because it doesn't understand what just happened. It just follows commands, maintains position, keeps the shot. And in a way, he got exactly what he wanted. A perfect, uninterrupted frame. A clean composition. A complete story, from beginning to end. Just not one he could ever edit. Not one he could ever post. Because in the end, he didn't lose to the storm, or the height, or even the structure. He lost to the idea that getting closer always makes something better, that pushing further always adds value, that the perfect shot is worth the risk. But perfection has a cost, and sometimes the difference between a great shot and a final one is just a single step too far. 10 stories, different places, different people, different decisions, but the same structure every time. One idea, one moment of confidence, one step past the limit, and then no way back. Because none of them thought they were making a mistake.
They thought they were, being smarter, being braver, being different. And that's the trap, not stupidity, but certainty. Because the moment you stop questioning yourself is the moment you stop protecting yourself. Common sense isn't intelligence, it's restraint. It's that quiet voice that says, "Don't do it." And every single story here started with someone deciding that voice was wrong.